My grandma didn't know how to drive, but she was always ready to go. In fact, if you said, "Grandma, would you like to go?" before you finished saying where, she had her coat. And her purse, of course. You know, she was always ready to go. And I think that I inherited that gene from her because I love to travel. I love to see different places, different people, to see parts of the world that are very different from the one in which I live. And it, I think, has been really helpful to me in helping me to understand not just the world, but even myself a little bit better. You know, I've had the great good fortune of standing in the ruins of the royal castle at Cashel, which was once the residence of the High Kings of Ireland. I've watched the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. I've walked through Versailles, the great palace built by Louis XIV outside of Paris. I've gone through the palace of the Austrian emperors. And along the way, I've had the opportunity to take a tour of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, which was the residence of the sultans of the Ottoman Empire for centuries. I've even seen the palace of the Emperor of Japan. You know, all of these castles, all of these palaces, all these imperial places are meant for only one purpose: to project power, so that everyone knows that this is the one who has the power. No. Palaces, you don't need 1,000 rooms if you're a single person. No, you do that so it projects power to those around. It's meant to impress them with that power. And you know, today we celebrate the King of Kings. We celebrate Christ the King, the Lord of the universe. And it's a strange thing when we talk about him as a king, because you and I know that just in a few weeks, actually, we're going to celebrate his birth. But he's not like those kings that have gone before him. He's not like the emperors or the sultans. He didn't use force or fear or brute power. No, that's the method that they used to enforce their commands, to bend people to their will. Force and fear and just brute power. No, the one we're about to celebrate in just a little over a month is not born in a palace, but in a humble stable. It was just a cave, my brothers and sisters. It wasn't anything grand and glorious. It was a cave where animals were placed to protect them and shelter them from the dangers and the world. And his crib was just a feed trough. This is the one we celebrate today. He is, we believe, the Son of God, the very presence of God among us, the God who created the universe, the God of volcanoes and tornadoes, the God of exploding stars and hurricanes and earthquakes, the God of power and might. And yet he comes to us not in power, but he comes to us in humble service. He comes to heal and to reconcile and to bring us together in himself. No, the one we're about to celebrate, the one we will celebrate his birth, doesn't come in power and strength, but comes in humble service, in mercy, compassion, and love. And that is the way he will live his life among us. He had every right to command, to order, and yet he never did that. He never used power except for good. He never used power except to heal. He never used power except to make whole. It was always for others, never for himself. No, the reason is very simple. You know, there are people who believe that you can use power and force and brute strength to make people different. And that may be true, but it doesn't make them better. No. The use of force and fear and brute strength only makes people less. It may break their spirit. It may crush their will. It will make them less than what God intended them to be. It will never make them better. No. The one who created the universe knows that the only way that we will be made better is through the use of humble service, compassion, mercy, and love. That only those will transform. Force and fear and brute power don't do it. No, it not only destroys human beings, but it even destroys the person who wields that kind of power, because ultimately it will corrupt their spirit and erode their very soul. They will become less as well. No, my brothers and sisters, you and I gather to celebrate the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Master of the universe, who comes to us in humble service, who comes to us in mercy and compassion and in love. He will be crowned with thorns, and he will rule his kingdom from the rough wood of a cross. And it is there that he will reveal the depth of his love for us all, because it is there that his humble service comes to an end in a dramatic fashion. It is there that his compassion is revealed as he reaches out even to another thief on the cross. It will be there that he reveals his mercy and his compassion, and ultimately his love. He reveals his love for you and for me, for all humanity, and even for all of creation. That's who we celebrate today, my sisters and brothers. And he calls you and me to be members, citizens of his kingdom, to live as his followers, to live as those whose lives have been touched by those revelations of mercy and compassion and love, whose lives have been touched by his humble service, that you and I are called to live that same pattern, to give up the use of force and fear and power, to give those up, because we know that they corrode and they corrupt and they destroy. Is there a place for them? Oh, yeah, there is. But only in very rare and very limited circumstances. Only when humble service and compassion and mercy and love have failed, only then should we turn to force and fear and power. And all too often in this world, that's where we start. And that's wrong. That is wrong. It does not make this world better. It makes it less. My sisters and brothers, you and I gather here today to celebrate our call to be citizens of God's kingdom, to be followers of Christ, to be his sisters and his brothers. And he gives himself to us once more in humble service, in compassion and mercy and love. He speaks to us in his word. And ultimately, he will give us the gift of his very self, his body and blood. He will share that with us. He will transform bread and wine into his living presence so that you and I who receive that gift can become his living presence in this world. So that you and I who receive that humble gift can follow his pattern of humble service, compassion, and mercy and love. That is our call, my sisters and brothers, to live that way, to live his life, to live his ministry, his service. Today, you and I gather to celebrate our citizenship in God's kingdom, and once more to proclaim Christ as the one who truly governs our life. It is his will, his way of living, that's meant to govern our life. A life of humble service, of compassion, a life that is filled with mercy, a life that is filled with love. Only that, my sisters and brothers, will change this world. That is why he's called us to be citizens of his kingdom, so that you and I can be changed more and more to be like him, and And through us, his kingdom can be proclaimed through lives of humble service, of compassion, mercy, and love.